Welcome to Meck's online campus. Today we're starting a series on 4 shows that have recently streamed that sparked a lot of conversation. Not simply because they were popular or because they were critically acclaimed, although all of them were, but because they made us think. They struck a chord in us. They raised issues. They sparked conversations. They asked important questions, often spiritual in nature. You know, a German theologian named Karl Barth once quipped that when churches are at their best, when sermons are at their best, when theological thinkers are at their best, it's when they have a Bible in one hand and a newspaper in the other. I think we can update that a little bit and say it might just be when we have a Bible in one hand and what's streaming in the other. In other words, we're bringing the Bible to bear on current conversations and issues. These 4 shows are really worth talking about. Apple TV's Severance, Adolescence on Netflix, The Devil in the Family, which is on the rise in the Fall of Ruby Franke on Hulu, and HBO's The White Lotus. From what it means to be a person to what it means to be a parent, from sexuality to spirituality, from Buddhism to Christianity, from the problem of evil to the challenge of forgiveness, you name it, these 4 shows brought it up. Some things comfort the afflicted. These shows, I think, afflicted the comfortable. And I would argue in some really important ways, particularly if we take the questions they raise to the pages of the Bible. So let's do that. Let's talk about what we're streaming that is making us think. The questions these shows are raising and what the Bible would have to say in response and in dialogue with them. And let's start off with this one.
Every time you find yourself here, it's because you chose to come back. Hello, my name is Mark S., and I have, of my own free accord, elected to undergo the procedure known as severance. I give consent to sever my memories between my work life and my personal life. I acknowledge that once the procedure is complete, I will be unable to access my personal memories whilst on the severed floor.
Say gratitude.
Nor will I retain work memories.
Hey!
Sorry, when I return home at the end of the day. I make these statements freely.
Hi, kids. What's for dinner?
We warned you.
About the greeting? You were kidding.
We hate it. How many reasons did we come up with?
8.
Good morning. Hi, Mr. Milchek.
Mark, could I have a word?
Petey is no longer with this company.
I'm sorry, Mark. You guys were one of my favorite office friendships.
What happened?
We'd love to tell you, but unfortunately non-disclosure policy forbids.
I confer upon you the advanced role of department chief. Congratulations. A handshake is available upon request.
Thank you. May I have a handshake? Do I know you?
My name's Petey. I'm from work.
So, we're friends?
I'm your best friend. Nothing is what they say. I used to think it would take a monster to put someone in a place like that office. Especially if the person was himself. If you want to know what's going on down there, you'll find the beginning of a very long answer.
What's happening?
What is it we actually do here?
Well, Severance is now officially Apple TV's most watched series in its history, recently surpassing Ted Lasso. The idea behind Severance, and let me see if I'm going to assume you haven't seen this, although I know millions of people have, but let me just give you a synopsis. The idea behind Severance is that you can undergo a procedure that involves planting a microchip in your brain that then separates your work self from the rest of your identity. The procedure is being offered by a shadowy biotech company called Lumen Industries. They offer the opportunity to work there, but as a severed employee, which means that every time you go into their corporate building and enter the elevator and punch your floor, the microchip kicks in and you forget everything about your life. All you know, all you are is that person who works there. No memory of your past, no memory of what you even did that morning, no memory of anything outside of work. If you were married, you don't know it. If you have kids, you don't know it. You have no memory, no consciousness, no awareness of any kind about who you are in the outside world. Your only memories are those created and sustained by your work. Your only relationships are work relationships. Your only life is that world of work until your shift is done. Then you get back on the elevator and the microchip kicks in again, and then you have no memory of what happened at work, only your life on the outside. You share a body, but not a consciousness, which means that a severed person really does live two very separate lives, very distinct lives. And they refer to those lives as their innies and their outies. Their innies are their work selves. Their outies are whatever exists outside of work. But it's the outie that's in charge. They are the ones who decided to get severed. They are the ones who can decide to allow their innie to quit or make them keep working. What they are not told is that their severed personalities, their innies, really become a separate person with a separate life. They form different and unique relationships. Their personalities, their characters, even ability to succeed or fail become very different from their outside selves. Think about what you might be like, for example, if you didn't have any memory. If you didn't have all those gathered understandings and learnings or recollections of shaping events in your life, you might be a little different. Yet outies don't see their innies as part of who they are. They are like slaves, second-class humans, and their outies treat them that way. And the company they work for treats them and sees them that way. Even though they are real persons, real bodies, real consciousness, it's really them. It's not a second person. It's just the brain chip turns off their memory when they go to work, but the outies treat them as different people. They don't care if they're happy, sad, fulfilled, or miserable. One of the characters, a really telling scene, and again, I'm going to walk through all of these without giving away spoilers, but one of the characters, Helly, hates her life as an innie. So she sends a message to her outie self saying she wants to quit. She wants to resign. She doesn't want to do this. She's refused. She threatens to hurt herself, to cut off a finger, to kind of make a point because they share a body. So obviously that would affect her outie self. And she gets a video message from her outie that says, I understand that you're unhappy with the life that you've been given, but you know what? Eventually we all have to accept reality. So here it is. I am a person. You are not. I make the decisions. You do not. And if you ever do anything to my fingers, know that I will keep you alive long enough to horribly regret that. So instead of an escape, they have sentenced themselves, or that part of themselves, to a mind-numbing hell. That's the central premise. So kind of a mash-up between The Twilight Zone and The Office. There's so much about it that just hooks you. First, it really world builds. And by world building, I mean they really are creating a world, a reality that is unique unto itself and mind-blowing. You really do end every episode wanting to talk about what you just saw and what it means. And it's this fascinating alternative reality that you're trying to figure out and keep up with. And then there's the mystery about what Lumen, the company behind it all, is really doing and what the people who work there are really doing and why the practice of severance was introduced in the first place. Because it seems as the series goes on that Lumen wants everyone in the world to eventually experience some kind of severance. And mixed in with all of that is a really just hilarious parody of office culture, particularly in the first season. And that's the part that's like The Office. Everything from lampooning lame office parties to pathetic work incentives. It's just so ridiculously absurd, but so closely like what office cubicle culture can be like that is just laugh out loud funny. But the big draw are the questions that Severance raises. Questions related to the big issues of existence. What does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to have worth? What does it mean to be a person? What does it mean to be a unified human being? But the biggest question of all is this. If I could sever myself from myself, even for just the time that I spend at work. Would it solve anything? See, one of the big storylines of the series is what drives people to get severed and what happens to them as they then live out these two separate lives, how it works or doesn't work for them. Again, the premise behind Severance is that you sever your private home, outie life from your office, work, any life. But that's not just a premise, it's a promise. Namely, that you can separate your work self from the rest of yourself or the rest of your identity, and that it would somehow serve you, that it's somehow a good thing, it's going to help you, it's going to make your outie life better. And here's where it touches the biggest nerve of all. People who then use severance to escape emotional pain. For example, the main character, Mark Scout, pursued the severance program because he was grieving the death of his wife. He wanted to try and compartmentalize his grief. He wanted to escape the pain of her death for as much of his life as he could, in this case, while he was at work. But the show raises a very deep and important question. If you could do that, if you could separate yourself from your pain, would it help? Would it make you a happier person? Would it solve anything? Would it get you past whatever it is you're trying to endure? Would it make it easier on yourself as an outie if your innie was severed from that memory, severed from having to go through something unpleasant or hard, challenging, or difficult? Is it better to go through it, endure it, or avoid it? Or as Mark's sister asks him during the first season, do you ever think that maybe the best way to deal with a messed up situation in your life isn't to just shut your brain off half the time? But it's not just about creating a part of your life that doesn't suffer, whatever it is you might be suffering, like the death of a loved one. It's also about going through severance in order to make your innie go through the pain instead of you as an outie. You find out as the series goes on that people seize the procedure of severance to avoid any and every difficulty, anything that they don't want to experience, such as pursuing short-term severance to avoid the pain associated with childbirth, or going to the dentist, or even to escape something you don't like doing, like writing, a dozen thank you notes. You get your severed self, your innie, to do all that for you. Okay, so is a pain-free, challenge-free life best? Is avoidance the way to solve things, to get through things? If you could avoid pain, suffering, grief, things that are hard, challenging, taxing, or draining, would that give you the life that you want? It's interesting how a Christian worldview weighs in on this. I'll go ahead and tell you its answers. It would say, no, it would not give you the life that you want. It would also say that experiencing a stress-free, challenge-free, problem-free life isn't even what a relationship with God promises or entails or involves. The Christian faith is not about somehow achieving a pain-free life or a storm-free life, but engaging in a relationship with God who will see us through the pain and storms. In fact, the Christian faith sees that journey with God through pain and suffering as something formative, something beneficial. That God uses those things, can use those things, work through those things for our good, our betterment. Or as Henry Nouwen once wrote, asking what has wounded us is like asking what has made us. Let me give you a taste of the Bible's teaching on this from a section of the Bible known as James. It's called that because it was written by a man named James. He was the half-brother of Jesus, a later son of Mary and Joseph, head of the Jerusalem church. Tradition has it that he was known as Old Camel Knees because of the thick calluses built up on his knees after many years of determined prayer. Tradition also has it that he was martyred through a beheading around AD 62 under the great persecution of Christians by the Roman Emperor Nero. He was just a remarkable figure. Here's what he wrote about how we should actually think about things like pain, suffering, and grief. He said, when troubles come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. That's not exactly a severance mindset, is it? Much less a severance approach to life. That's not running away from it, but running toward it and embracing it and tackling it head on. Why would that be best? James gives us 3 reasons. First, he says it's an opportunity for joy. Now, don't misunderstand him here. He's not saying that whatever you're going through, that particular hardship or challenge, he's not saying that itself is a joyful thing, going through that, experiencing that. He's also not saying put some kind of phony plastic smile and act like everything's fine when it isn't fine. He's not saying that you should be happy about any of your trials. He never even uses the word happy. It's not about happy. We hear the word joy and we think happy, but they aren't the same thing. Don't confuse happiness with joy. Happiness is based on circumstances. It's driven by emotion. Joy is deeper. Here you're in real spiritual territory, not just emotional territory. It's based on how you think about something. It's not based on how you feel. It's a choice, a disposition, a settled anchoring of your life. James says you can have joy when the challenges come and look at it that way and experience joy, and here's why, is because of what the trials and the troubles allow to happen. Did you catch it? Let me read it again. He said, because you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. When it comes to faith, the kind of faith that James is talking about, you have basically 3 categories of people. First are those who have no real faith at all. They're not sure what they believe, they're not sure where they stand, or what they should even have faith in. Then there are those who would say they have faith, they would say that they believe, but they've never really done anything with their faith. They've never acted on it or relied on it or trusted it. It's there, but it's not developed. Then there are those who have faith and they have developed it. They have made it a vital, vibrant part of their life. It's a part of just how they do life. They act on it. They trust in it. They live by it. Think of these 3 types of people in relation to a rope and a mountain in front of them that they need to climb. And the rope is there for them to climb the mountain. The first group might see the rope, but they don't try and use it for climbing. They don't really believe it'll help them climb the mountain at all. So they don't touch it, use it, think about it. The second group sees the rope and believes it's a rope and believes it's there to be used, but they don't trust it. They don't put any weight on it. They won't even pull on it to see what happens or if it holds. So it's there conceptually for them. Then there's the third group. They see the rope and they use it to climb the mountain. They know it can be trusted because they pulled on it before, and taking a step or 2 up the mountain, they found that it held, and they went a little further, and they went a little further, and the more they used the rope, the more they could trust in it, the higher they climbed. You see, for a lot of people, even if they say they have faith, it's pretty meaningless. It's weak, it's superficial, it's undeveloped. It's not the way it's meant to be. That isn't going to serve your life. That's why James says that when troubles come, you can have joy. Why? Because you're being given this opportunity to trust the rope, to test it and then trust it. Your endurance is being given a chance to grow. Because only when you have endured a trial on the basis of your faith does it deepen and become something formidable. Faith really is like a muscle. It needs to be exercised to grow, to become strong. And here's how it's exercised. When you face a challenge, a trial, a difficulty, you don't sever yourself. You have a choice. You can either endure or give into it and let it destroy your life, overwhelm your life, become the defining mark of your life. But if you endure, then you grow and you mature and you become something bigger and better and deeper and brighter and stronger than you were. You don't break, you break out. And that's why James says that no matter what you are going through, you can consider it joy because of what it is doing to you from the inside out. But that's not all. After saying it should be met with joy because it's an opportunity for faith-based endurance to develop, he added a third thing, didn't he? Take another look. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. We can be perfected. Not in the sense of, sinless perfection. That's not what he's talking about. But in the sense of increasingly becoming who we were made to be in Christ. We can reach our potential. Again, asking what has wounded you, hurt you, challenged you, grieved you, can be like asking what has made you. It's like the way steel is forged. It's through the fire. It's the heat that makes it strong. In biology, this is called the adversity principle. Biologists have discovered that habitual, ongoing well-being just isn't good for a species. An existence without challenge is not healthy. For example, you see it in the flabby animals at a zoo that have their food delivered to them every day. You see it in rainforest trees because water is everywhere. They don't have to extend their root system, but maybe a few feet below the surface, which is why even the slightest windstorm can knock them over. But a tree planted in dry land has to send its roots down 30 feet or more in search of water, and not even a gale force wind can knock those trees down. It's no different with our life. Our pain is often what has developed us, strengthened us, allowed us the ability to grow. In another part of the Bible, in the book known as Romans, written by the Apostle Paul, it says, "We know that suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, and character, hope." Thinking about this reminds me of an old legend I read about years ago from a town in Germany that for a number of years had experienced very poor harvests. Finally, the townspeople went to God at the beginning of the year and said, "God, our harvests have been so bad for 1 year. Let us plan everything." God said, "All right, for 1 year." And so whenever they asked for rain, God sent rain. Whenever they asked for sun, God sent sun. And just as they thought it would, the corn never grew higher, the wheat never grew thicker. But when harvest time came, they discovered that the tall corn had no ears and the thick wheat had no head of grain. So they went back to God and they said, "God, you failed us. We asked for sun, you sent sun, and we asked for rain, you sent rain, but there is no crop." And God said, "No, I did exactly what you asked, but you never asked for the harsh north winds. And without the harsh north winds, there is no pollination, and with no pollination, there is no crop." You see, severance isn't the answer to the life you want, to becoming complete. Faith-based endurance is the answer. And again, it reminds me of another example, this from an actual life, human life, that when this man was 7 years old, his family was forced out of their home, and he was forced to actually go to work at that young age to help support them. At the age of 9, his mother died. At 22, he lost his job. He wanted to attend law school, but he didn't have the education needed to be accepted. At the age of 23, he borrowed money to become a partner in a small store. 3 years later, his partner died, leaving him with a huge debt that would end up taking years to repay. At age 28, he asked a girl he had been dating for 4 years to marry him. She turned him down. The only other girl he had ever loved had died several years before. He had an interest in politics, ran for office, lost, ran for office again, lost. At the age of 37, on his third try, he was elected to Congress, but 2 years later, he ran again and failed. And he then experienced an emotional breakdown, a nervous breakdown. At the age of 41, in the midst of what was already an unhappy marriage, his 4-year-old son died. That drove him to his knees as never before. He turned to his Christian faith with renewed vigor, but his trials weren't over. The next year, he was rejected again for another office. At 45, he ran for the Senate and lost. At 49, he again ran for the Senate. Once again, he lost. But through every one of those setbacks, heartbreaks, defeats, he remained a man of steadfast faith, a faith that allowed him to not only endure, but to increasingly become who God was wanting him to be, who God was shaping him to be. He kept grabbing onto that rope, kept finding that it held him, kept climbing up the mountain. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about yet. In all that I've told you, if it doesn't ring any bells, somebody doesn't come to mind, it's because we don't even remember that all those trials happened to him. We only remember what all of that endurance resulted in. We only remember that at the end of all of that, at the age of 51, Abraham Lincoln became the 16th president of the United States. And that throughout his presidency and the great trial of the Civil War, he constantly kept clinging to that rope, a faith that had been developed through endurance. Let me read James's words again. Only this time, think of it like the choice that it is, because this is a choice. When troubles come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy, for you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow, so let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. Yeah, I'll never forget something I caught on TV many years ago over the summer. It was a 1-hour program on the Hawaiian Open Ironman Triathlon. If you aren't familiar with that event, it's the premier triathlon competition in the world. And it deserves its name. It involves a swim in the open ocean of over 2 miles, followed by over 100 miles of biking, followed by a full marathon run, which is just over 26 miles. What grabbed me was not the competition itself, but the stories of the people involved, their strength of will, their fight to the finish. One of the individuals profiled was a woman named Lynn Brooks. She was competing in her 19th Ironman. That takes some commitment. She talked how one year during the marathon leg of the competition, she left the race and she entered an aid tent by the side of the road. Her body was aching, her emotions were drained, the desire to stop, to just end it all right there was just overpowering to her. When she entered the tent, she looked down and sitting on a bench was a man who had also been competing, and now he was just resting and relaxing. His shoes were off, and he was just drinking an ice-cold beer. Reading her thoughts, he kind of held it up, looked at her, and said, "All you got to do is drop out of the race like me." Suddenly, she said she realized who he was. He was the devil. And she immediately left the tent and re-entered the race. Reflecting on the moment, they captured it. It just filled her eyes with tears. And she said it was the hardest, I'll never forget this phrase, she said it was the hardest and most glorious day of my life. Severance is a really good show, worth watching, worth talking about, and it gives an answer to its most central question. It really does. It's the same answer as the Bible. Can you really escape pain and suffering? No. And if you could, would you really want to? Would it give you the life you long for? No. But what Severance doesn't go on to say is how you can get the life you long for. That when troubles come, there is a rope that you can pick up. And that rope is everything because it's attached to the living God. Okay. Well, let me pray for you. Father, thank you so much for that rope, for a faith that is connected to you. Thank you that when troubles come, we can have joy because of what you can do in and through our life as a result of that, if we will just exercise our faith and cling to you. I pray for people who right now are going through very difficult times. They needed to hear what we talked about today. And I pray for those who may be having it in front of them and they don't even know it. I hope they'll never forget to cling to the rope. I pray all that in Jesus' name. Amen.